Well, good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion on this Thursday morning, and we've had an absolutely incredible week already. And I'll tell you what, yesterday, if you want a little bit of volatility, you want a little bit of movement, you got a little bit of everything yesterday. As a matter of fact, we started off solid. Everything looked pretty solid out of the gates. We moved up, and towards the noon hour, we were up close to 200 points on the Dow. We had the S&P up about 7 points. NASDAQ struggling a little bit with just a little bit of pressure on some of those names in the technology space that have really been moving to the upside. Maybe just a little relief, a little bit of pressure on those. Apple, Wynn, PayPal, Adobe, those kind of names. Adobe really had that major flip. But you look over at the Dow, things look pretty strong. You had Chevron really exploding to the upside off of crude. You had Boeing, you had Goldman Sachs, IBM, Intel. You get the idea. 3M was one of those names also participating. JP Morgan. So financials really kind of standing out. Financials having a pretty decent day. We also had energy with a really nice, strong push to the upside. Not just Chevron. You look at those beta names. You had Diamondback, you had Oxy, Marathon, One Oak, those kind of names really with substantial moves to the upside, and definitely something that really stood out with as crude moved up about 4.5%. Now we had a volatility index yesterday trading about 25, 26, and that's where it seemed to be finding itself throughout the session around the noon hour. And that's where we've been watching that just sort of steadily come back a little bit each and every day, getting closer and closer to a month or two ago where we got those lows near that 21 level. But I talked about the financials. That certainly stood out because we look at the XLF and we talk about 25 being that magnet. It's been above 25, it's been below 25, but 25 seems to be the level where the XLF seems to find itself. And yesterday with a little bit of a push holding right around those 25 levels. The XLE with a really nice push to the upside up about 4.5%. And industrials really participating, biotech participating. What had a little bit of pressure on it? Well, you already know with the NASDAQ, but it's technology and the semiconductors, a little bit of a pullback yesterday. As a matter of fact, you look over at some of those and you could sort of sense that there was just some pushing. It wasn't anything violent to the downside, but certainly some of those names that had been really moving were some of the names pulling it down. Apple and Microsoft and Adobe and AMD and Wynn and Las Vegas Sands, Nvidia, Facebook, those kind of names. But you look over at the VIX, trading around 26. Then you get to the final 90 minutes of the day. We heard from the Fed. The final 90 minutes of the day did not look too pretty at all. As a matter of fact, financials were able to hold on. They still held on to about a 1% move. Energy held on about a 4% move. Technology and chips really taking the hit. Biotech really held on as well pretty nicely, 2%. But that final 90 minutes was not pretty. And it was a pretty dramatic move to the downside when you really look at some of that selling and the selling pressure. Now, this morning, we had some opening indications down about 300 points. And that's certainly something that stood out and got everybody awake. And early on, we were down about 340 points. We have just recovered in less than the first 20 minutes or so. It's early in the session. We're only down about 240 points. As a matter of fact, the NASDAQ was indicated down about 250. Started out about 200, a little over 200. Now down about 155. So a little bit of a rally off of those lows. The volatility index did spike up towards that 29 level, was hanging right around 28, and now up like 7-8%. Now 27.5 and actually just dipping below that level as well. So really seeing a lot of different movement, and that final 90 minutes yesterday and today, just a little bit of a rally definitely off of those lows. Now, what was really in the red early on? Well, Chevron, Apple. We've talked about some of the pressure that we were seeing in some of the technology space, Intel, Cisco. We also had some Boeing pressure as well. When I looked at the Dow, every single one of the 30 were in the red. So there was nothing. Matter of fact, when I took a look at the top NASDAQ names, I couldn't find anything green. It was just amazing how much pressure was on NXPI and WDC and Tesla and all those different names. We had tech down about 2%. We had the chips down well over 2%. And biotech finally taking a little bit of a breather. That was down about 1.5%. So a really wild ride early on already. We've watched this thing bounce around pretty significantly, actually. When you look at the Dow, it's already been in at least 100-point range minimum. And the NASDAQ close to about the same kind of range. So really a lot of movement early. And by the way, I didn't forget. We got some unusual option activity. The first thing that hit today, Mattel. Now, Mattel was really interesting. It's underneath 12, trading 11.90. We had a huge buyer of 14,000 of the October 12 calls. They were going for about 35 to about 65 cents. that was something that really stood out because this is something where they've actually extended out a little bit. They're not staying in September, and they certainly aren't doing the early parts of October. These are regular expiring October options, so a little bit more extended. The 12 strikes, so just barely out of the money by a dime, and they're paying about 35 to 65 cents. Any kind of a move, and these things very much could react very quickly. And so, again, you have to really understand everything that you're looking at when we talk about these options world. Now, we did return back up above 30 million contracts yesterday, and we still have been on this unbelievable record pace. You got to have knowledge. Knowledge is king. If you understand the world of the options and calls, puts, all the different Greeks that go into it, the pricing, if you've got the education, you have the opportunity. And that is so important. You want that opportunity. This is the growth area. This is the place where we see growth going forward. And I talk about this all the time. When I look at stocks, my biggest focus after I look at the fundamentals is where do they have growth? Do they have growth? Is it something that's very impressive or not? And leadership. Well, certainly with the options, we do have incredible growth. It's been growing almost every single year for the last decade or more. And this year, absolute record pace. And I'm sure that we're going to continue on this record pace based upon a lot of different factors going in. Obviously, the elections and going into the final part of the year and anything having to do with vaccines. A lot of that certainly could create some huge volumes even in the final couple of months of the year. Folks, have a great day of trading. I'll see you at noon. That's why I'm all dressed up. I got the halftime report, got my shirt and tie. I'm ready to go. Let's go. Giddy up.